Welcome to the Rum Revival. My name's Arminder, and today I'm highlighting a number of newly released and newly announced rums from the last month or so. Now, some of these rums have only just come out, so it might take a few weeks or maybe a month or so before they're available throughout the country, but definitely keep an eye out for them. Now, first up, let's focus on a couple of releases from Barbados, and let's start with the newest release from Mount Gay's Single Estate series. This is release number 2. Pretty sure that's all it's really called. Now, the whole concept with this series is that they make these rums from molasses made from sugarcane that they've grown and harvested themselves. Now, unlike the bulk molasses that they source for the rest of their releases, this molasses is much less processed and has a higher sugar content. Now, the molasses goes through a 9-day fermentation with a cultivated yeast strain. It's then pot distilled and then aged 5 years in ex-bourbon casks. Now, where last year's release was a blend of molasses from the 2016 and 2017 harvests, this year's release is being promoted as a single vintage release with all of the molasses coming from Mount Gay's 2018 harvest. In total, 5,418 bottles were produced, with about 1,200 available here in the US, and as with last year's release, it's priced at $400. So I bought a bottle of last year's release, the first release, and the rum was good and well made, but I don't know if it was worth the $400 price tag. That being said, I appreciate all the costs associated with buying farmland and bringing on a whole farming and harvesting team. There's a lot of overhead involved that naturally is going to bring up the price. But $400 is still $400. And it still feels like there's still tons of bottles of this first release floating around. Like, I don't think they really flew off the shelf, and I doubt this new release will be any different. Now, the next release from Barbados is the latest exceptional cask selection release from Foursquare. It's Magisterium, which is a very fun word to say. Magisterium. It makes me feel like a wizard or something. Now, the Exceptional Cask Selection Series, or ECS, is Foursquare's high-end range of rums that they usually release 2 or 3 times a year. And Magisterium, which is the 26th release in the series, is a blend of 3 different pot and column 16-year-old rums. The first was aged all 16 years in ex-bourbon, the second was aged 9 years in ex-bourbon, and then 7 years in ex-Oloroso sherry casks, and the third was aged first 3 years in ex-bourbon and then 13 years in ex-Oloroso sherry casks. Now, all those rums are aged in Barbados and then blended together for this release at 58% ABV. Now, it's priced around $160, which is a bit of a jump from the price of the previous ECS release, the Equipoise, which was around $140 to $150 depending where you were. Though to be fair, the Magisterium does have 2 extra years of aging. Moving on to Jamaica, we have the newest release from Hampden Estate. This is the second 8 Marks collection. This consists of all 8 unique base distillates that Hampden produces that they then use to age and or blend for their commercial releases, or to sell in bulk to third-party brokers. So last year, Hampden released the first version of this set where all 8 of the marks were bottled at 60% ABV and were unaged. Now with this set, you get the same 8 marks, but now they're each aged 1 year in ex-bourbon casks and bottled at 52% ABV. And this set is priced around $180. As with last year, you get an accompanying sheet with lots of detail and production information about the marks. And this year it's now 4 pages and it really goes deep into the aging and maturation process. Now, I'm hoping to do a video on this set, but as you can imagine, it's going to take some time because I got to work through 8 different rums. Now, I will say, so far, to really maximize your experience with this set, you kind of need to compare each aged mark to the unaged version to kind of really get the full experience. Now, let's head over to the state of Jalisco in Mexico for a new cane juice rum brand, Pelacañas. They've released 2 rums so far. They're Blanco and Llamarada. Now, the brand was started by Monica Bieza, whose family owns Hacienda El Carmen, which is an estate with a farm, a luxury hotel, a spa, and a distillery. Now, the rums are produced with a blend of 3 different cane varietals. The cane juice is wild fermented for 2 to 3 days in open pine vats and then double distilled, first in a steel alembic still and then a copper pot still. The Llamarada is bottled undiluted at 55% ABV and priced at $55, while the Blanco is diluted down to 44% ABV and priced around $40. Now, I am loving the cane juice rum scene out of Mexico, so I am super excited for these releases. Now, moving on to Bangalore, India, we have a brand new release from Amrut Distilleries. This is their Bella. Now, Amrut is primarily known for producing single malt whiskeys under the Amrut brand name, but they also produce brandy, vodka, gin, and of course, rum. Now, they've been producing rum since 1955, and they release rums under both the Old Port and Amrut brands. Now, what makes this rum notable is that instead of cane juice or molasses, it's made from jaggery, a form of solidified, unrefined sugar that's used throughout South Asian cooking. It's very similar to panela or piloncillo, which is found throughout Latin America. Now think of jaggery as a step or two before molasses. With molasses, you've heated and reduced down cane juice until it becomes like a thick syrup and sugar crystals are formed. You then separate out the crystals, and what you're left with, that thick syrup, that's your molasses. But with jaggery, as you've reduced down the cane juice and sugar crystals are formed, you don't separate out those crystals. Instead, as it's all cooling down, it becomes a soft solid that you can then shape into a ball or put into a mold so it's in the form of a brick or a cone once it completely cools down and becomes a solid. Now, when making this rum, the jaggery is mixed with water, then fermented, and then pot distilled. It's aged 6 years in ex-bourbon casks and bottled at 46% ABV, and it retails for around $85. So now you might remember last year there was a single cask release of an Amrut jaggery rum from Habitation Velier. They were super limited, like under 90 bottles or something like that. Lots of folks, myself included, wanted to get their hands on a bottle but couldn't. So if you were bummed out about that like I was, well, hopefully this is the next best thing. Next up, we have 2 rums selected by and exclusive to online retailer Sealbox. The first one is the Special Select Barrel from Dorado out in Guyana. Now this is a blend of rums aged at least 8 years and includes column still rums from the French Saval and Diamond coffee stills, as well as a small amount of rum from the Port Morant double wooden pot still. The blend is bottled at 57.2% ABV and it's priced at $90, and it's limited to 210 bottles. Now the next rum selected by Sealbox is a 16-year-old single cask release from Chairman's Reserve in St. Lucia. Now this was made on their coffee column still and aged a full 16 years in a port cask. Now it's bottled at 60.6% ABV and priced at $150. Now this release is even more limited than the Dorado with only 120 bottles, so if you're interested, jump on it now. I'll have links down below in the description to both of the bottlings if you're interested. And lastly, we have 9 new releases from a brand new American independent bottler, Roaming Road Spirits. Now the founder of the brand is Mike Gilmore, who started off in the spirits world operating a liquor store out in Wyoming, Country Lane Liquor. Now over the last 17 years, he's done numerous barrel picks for his store, and he's taking that experience and spinning that into his own brand and sourcing and bottling single cask rums, cognacs, armagnacs, and who knows what else. Now for the first set of releases, Roaming Road has 7 rums available right now on their website and another 2 coming soon. Now, I don't have as much information on these rums as I'd like to have. They don't really list which distilleries their rums are from, but I have reached out to Mike, who said he would share what he can, so check out the description down below for the latest and fullest detail on each of these rums as I get them. First up is a single column still rum from Venezuela that's aged 20 years in ex-bourbon ex-rum cask. It's bottled at 57.2% ABV and priced at $120. Then we have a pot still Jamaican rum aged 9 years in an ex-rum cask. It's bottled at a divine 66.6% ABV and priced at $125. Then we have a calm still rum from Belize aged 17 years in an ex-bourbon ex-rum cask. It's bottled at 62.2% ABV and priced at $140. Then we have a pot still rum from Australia aged 16 years in an ex-bourbon cask. It's bottled at 65.4% ABV and priced at $125. Now the next 3 Roaming Road rums are collaborations with Lincoln Road Package Store out in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. The first is a pot calm blend of rums from Foursquare in Barbados that's aged 16 years in an ex-bourbon cask. It's bottled at 56.6% ABV and priced at $136. Next, we have a pot still rum from Diamond Distillery in Guyana. I believe it's the Port Morant specifically for this, and it's been aged 12 years, either all or some of the time, in a Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. It's bottled at 53.1% ABV and priced at $110. Then we have a calm still rum from Panama aged 18 years in an ex-bourbon cask. It's bottled at 53.8% ABV and priced at $115. Now the next 2 rums from Roaming Road are not out yet, but are listed as coming soon on their website. First is a cane juice calm still rum from Martinique, aged 6 years in ex-bourbon cask. It's bottled at 65.3% ABV and priced at $90. And lastly, we have a calm still rum from Diamond Distillery in Guyana that's been aged 8 years in an ex-bourbon ex-rum cask. It's bottled at 59.5% ABV and priced at $80. So that's quite a few releases from Roaming Road. Now I don't know anyone yet who's had the rums, but I am interested in trying some of the offerings, and I will say that I absolutely love how the bottles look. Real classy. Well, there you go. Those are the newly released or newly announced rums from the last month or so. Now, do any of them stand out to you? Are you planning on getting any of them? I'd love to know, so let me know in the comments down below. Now, if you're interested in checking out some exclusive behind-the-scenes content and first impressions videos where I try a rum for the very first time and give you my gut reaction to them, then consider checking out and supporting me on Patreon. I have tons of content there that I think you'll really like. Thanks so much for watching. Catch y'all next time. Cheers.